Well, hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited about today's interview. It is with Udo Erasmus, and he wrote a best-selling book called Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill that I read over 15 years ago now, 16 years ago, 2005. I was going through graduate school and I was taking biochemistry and I was reading nutrition books at that time. And I found this book and it really helped shape how I look at nutrition and wellness. And so it made a big difference, as far as really shaping what I was going to later teach to my clients. So he had an excellent book, over 250,000 copies of this book that he sold. And, just really a great master's piece that he put together. So it's really an honor for me to be able to interview him. He is also the founder of Udo's Choice supplement brand. If you go into pretty much almost any health food store these days, you'll find this. He's a global leader in cutting edge health products. He's sold tens of millions of bottles of healthy oils, probiotics, and digestive enzymes. He invented the methodology and machinery that created the healthy fats and oils industry. He introduced the world to the importance of essential fats, EFAs, derived from flax seeds, and he's truly a pioneer in the health and wellness industry. Let's talk about, kind of the start, how you got into this and, why you started to really focus in on healthy fats and bad fats.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a long story and a short story, so I'll give you the short version of the long story. I was born during the Second World War. And we were refugees when I was not 3 years old yet. The communists chasing us in tanks and trucks, and the Allies shooting at us from planes. And we were fleeing out of Poland on horse-drawn hay wagons, mostly women and young children, because all the men were off to war. And just the chaos of that and the fear and the anxiety around it, and the not being able to depend on anything, kind of was shaped my early childhood. And so I was always trying to figure out how things worked, because my cure was, if you know how things work, then you know what you can depend on. So later on, when I got into higher education, I got into science to figure out how things work. Then I got into biosciences to figure out how creatures work. Then I got into psychology to figure out how thinking works. And then I got into medicine because I wanted to know how health works, but found out very quickly that it was only about disease.
Yeah.
And I went back into biosciences and got into biochemistry and genetics, because when you study biology, you're actually studying the normal functioning of normal creatures, as opposed to the dysfunction of sick creatures. And medicine focuses on the dysfunction of sick creatures. And I wanted to know what health is, because I thought if you knew what health is, you could take a person who's departed from health, turn them around in the direction of health, and then give them a push and get them better. But you have to know in what direction to push them, and you have to know what health is in order to do that.
That really reminds me of, my graduate school, my first doctorate was in chiropractic. And in chiropractic school, we use the term, the original pioneers of chiropractic used the term dis-ease. Right. So somebody would go from health to dis-ease.
Dis-ease, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they would spend a lot of time in that state and before finally being diagnosed with a disease.
Right. Yeah. Dis-ease as opposed to ease, health being ease, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And my driver has always been, there must be a way that people can live better than the way I lived during the war.
Yeah.
And there must be a way that people can live in harmony. So that's been my driver all my life. And eventually I got into self-knowledge because I needed to know how I work. And then I got married, had kids, 3 kids. My marriage broke up. I was really upset. I wanted to kill something. So I took a job as a pesticide sprayer. This is the short story. And when I got poisoned, I went to the doctor and said to the doctor, "What do you have for pesticide poisoning?" And she said, "Nothing." And that was the day self-responsible healthcare started to make sense to me. Oh my God, if I don't care about my health, maybe nobody does.
Yeah.
And so I then got into, because I had the background, I got into reading about health and nutrition, disease and nutrition. Wasn't thinking about water and air then at that point. That's also important. So I was focused on nutrition, because the idea was, well, your body's made out of food.
Mm-hmm.
And every year, 98% of the atoms in your body are removed and replaced. And that means if you're sick, then if you raise your standard of intake of food, water, and air, within 1 year, you will have rebuilt 98% of your body to a higher standard. That's why healing is possible.
Yeah.
And it's about standards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Better, more energy for healing, or less toxins, or better digestion, or making sure that you optimize your intake of all of the essential building blocks. That's the kind of the foundation. And, you know, there's psychological stuff too.
Sure.
I got into that later. But in terms of the building blocks, in terms of the physical stuff, it's not that complicated. And life heals the body on a continuing basis because it's always turning over. So raise the standard and you turn it over into a better place.
That's right? Absolutely. So, yeah, so important. And so we got to obviously, we got to master our own health, and we got to really take responsibility for it. And it's kind of what you were saying there. That's what you did. Yeah. And so how did you get into studying fats?
So when I was looking at I went into Medline. They had 600,000 citations, studies on health and nutrition, disease and nutrition, 600,000. And I was looking at all of it because I'm interested in all of health, not just fats.
Yeah.
But I got stuck on fats when I realized, there was a contradiction. They said, okay, first of all, there are two essential nutrients that come from fats. One is omega-3 and one is omega-6. We knew omega-6s were essential in 1929. It's a long time ago. Yeah. But omega-3s were established as essential the year after I got poisoned while I had my head buried in the journals. So I got there right at the beginning of that. And then then they started to say things like, I read things like, well, omega-6 is essential, an essential nutrient for every cell in your body. And it gives you cancer and kills you. And it drove me nuts. That contradiction. How can something be essential for health and at the same time give you cancer and kill you? And that contradiction, trying to figure out that can't be right. There must be something else I'm missing. That got me into how oils are made, got into production, processing. And then I found out that when oils are made, oils have a very short shelf life. The omega-3 and 6 especially, they light damages them, oxygen damages them, heat damages them.
Right.
So they need a lot of care. And we actually give them less care than we give to any other essential nutrient. We throw them in a frying pan. But the industry, when they try to make oils have a long shelf life, which by nature, they're kind of not such a long shelf life.
Yeah.
So they want to give them a long shelf life so that they can make them in Vancouver where I am, and they can sell them in Johannesburg. For that, you need a long shelf life. And so they figured out if you treat the oil with Drano or sodium hydroxide, a very corrosive base, to remove things in the oil, then with phosphoric acid, very corrosive acid used for degreasing windows, then they bleach them with bleaching clays. That turns them rancid. And now they have to heat them to frying temperature in order to boil off the rancid molecules. And at the end of that, you have a colorless, odorless, tasteless oil that has a 3-year shelf life. Then they flip it in a plastic bottle, which is also stupid because oils swell plastic and plastic leaches into oils quicker than into water. And then they put it on the shelf. You get to buy it.
Right.
In that processing, about 1% of the molecules get damaged.
Yeah.
And 1% doesn't sound like much. And so I said to, because I'd been poisoned, I called the Oil Chemist Society, American Oil Chemist Society, the umbrella organization for the industry. And I said, I want to talk to a researcher because I have some questions. He said, okay, no problem. Got me the researcher. And I said to him, hey, listen, when you know it does damage to the oils, why do you do these processes? And he said, well, for one reason is because when we do these processes, we can get rid of half of the pesticides in the oil. And of course, I've been poisoned by pesticides.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh, you mean the other 50% stays in the oil? That's not what I wanted to hear, right? So then I said to him, well, why don't you start with organically grown seeds? And there was this long silence at the other end of the phone. And I waited. I'm obvious, you probably know I'm a talker.
Yeah.
I can listen too. So I waited and waited. And he came back and he was really angry. He said, I don't know what your problem is. The oil is only, 1% damaged. And if you got 99% on an exam, you'd be damn happy, wouldn't you? This is what he said, right?
Right.
So there were two things. One was I used to get 100% in my genetics exams because I was really good at it because I was so interested in it.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't impressed with the 99% as much as he was. But the second thing was that I thought, well, maybe I'm overreacting. After all, it's only 1%. Mm-hmm. So we were told in school, when in doubt, do the math. So I decided to do the math. And I decided, how many damaged molecules are you going to find in 1 tablespoon of an oil that is 1% damaged by the processing? And I ask people, and they always underestimate the amount of damage by at least 1 billion times.
Really?
In 1 tablespoon of an oil, 1% damaged by processing, you get 60 quintillion damaged molecules.
Wow.
That's more than 1 million damaged molecules for every one of your body's 60 trillion cells.
Yeah. By damaged molecules, would that be like trans fats? That would be
all kinds of different
created
ones.
In there.
Trans fats, fragmented molecules, cyclized molecules, cross-linked molecules within triglycerides, cross-linked molecules across triglycerides, dimers, trimers, polymers, all things that never existed in nature, for which life never made a genetic breakdown program.
Right.
So then you eat them, and they pile up in your body, and wherever they go, they interfere with what's supposed to be going on. And that's how you get sick. That's how you get poisoned. So they're poisonous because they're unnatural. Life doesn't have a way. We don't have a genetic program that codes for something to break it down. And so then they pile up, and you take 1 tablespoon. I told you over 1 million damaged molecules for every cell, but we use 2 to 4 a day. And when we throw them in the frying pan, you got to multiply that number by another 3 to 6 times. And then you do that not just 1 day, not just 1 week, not just 1 year. You do it for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And maybe you get cancer because the molecules that interfere with body architecture or body biochemistry, they drive your immune system crazy.
Yeah.
Because your immune system gets you chronic inflammation, and inflammation's behind what? Cancer, atherosclerosis, Alzheimer's, the rheumatic diseases, the arthritic diseases.
Yeah, and then
and
within
many
the
other
cell,
degenerative diseases.
Right. And then within the cell, they're driving up oxidative stress that's damaging the mitochondria, damaging the DNA.
Right.
Yeah.
They are there, and there's also research that these damaged molecules interfere with the process of oxidation, which is where all of our energy comes from.
That's right.
And so when I found all of that out, and omega-3s are essential, and every cell needs them, and 99% of the population doesn't get enough omega-3 for optimum health. I lit up like a firecracker. I said, oh my God, if we could make oils with health in mind, and we could bring them back into the population and make them available to people, we could help so many people.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just lit me up like a firecracker. And then that whole thing, I have no business background.
Yeah.
I've been around it now for a while, so I a little bit, but I didn't have any business background. I had a huge amount of enthusiasm. And so that whole thing got driven by the enthusiasm of being able to help so many people get better quality of life.
And you definitely have as well, right? Yeah. I mean, obviously your book has been read by over 250,000 people around the world.
Yeah. Well, it's been bought by 250,000. Maybe
hopefully they've read it. Right?
maybe don't only got read by 10 people.
Yeah. Well, I was one of those. And then, your products are all over the place. I see them pretty much in every health food store that I go into. So you've done a great job at, getting the word out and getting your products out there and into people's hands. Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about, you like which types of fats should we make sure that we're avoiding? like, for example, they growing up, my parents used to have vegetable oil in our cabinet, right? And you'd think that title, vegetable oil, right? We're told we need to eat more vegetables, right? So we think that that's healthy.
Sounds like really good.
Yeah. Right. Sounds like it's good. But obviously, based on all your research, we know that that's not good at all. So let's clarify what fats kill, and then we'll go into the fats that heal.
Okay. They're really, if the fats that kill, number one, trans fatty acids. Those are not the worst, but they're bad enough. And we all know that now, but they were in products for almost 100 years without ever needing to be labeled as present in it. And you could figure out how much trans fatty acids there were by summing up the saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated fats, and then looking at how close that was to 100% of the total fat. And the part that was missing was the trans fatty acids, but most people didn't know that.
Right. Yeah.
So and so they
didn't label them.
Right.
So.
They didn't have to be on the label.
Yeah.
Harvard School of Public Health blew the whistle on them. Very courageous thing they did, because sometimes it doesn't go well when you go against industry. And so everybody knows about them now, and there are not so many in the food supply, even though there are still some. If you have less than 0.5% trans fatty acids, you can say there are no trans fatty acids on the label.
Yeah, so, actually, I think it's just less than 0.5 gram. I know you said percent, but I think it's less than
0.5%.
Okay, per serving.
0.5% of whatever. 0.5% of the whole deal, or 0.5% of serving.
Right. I think it's because I know, like with Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
They didn't change. This is what I had heard, was when the laws came out on trans fats, they didn't actually change the recipe. They just changed the serving size, right? So it used to be like 4 cookies. They changed it to 1 cookie, and that lowered the amount of trans fat to like less than 0.5 gram. And then then they could say trans fat free, even though it wasn't actually trans fat free. Right. You could look on the ingredients and you could see partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, which we know, is trans fat.
Which there are trans fats in.
But they use that trick to kind of get through the system.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's new information.
Yeah.
And they could have just replaced them with saturated fats.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they have the same properties, but they're more natural.
Yep. Yep.
So that's a disappointing decision.
Hopefully they've done that. I haven't looked in years, but
after this, they may start thinking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's one. The worst is fried oils. When you fry, and I try to say to people, look, oils are vindictive. They will treat you like you treat them. So if you make them with care, then they will take care of your health.
Yeah.
And if you fry them, they will fry your health.
Right.
Fried oils fry health. It's like a chant we should have. Fried oils fry health. Fried oils fry health. So that's probably the worst. And I think the worst thing we've ever invented to do to our food is inventing frying pans.
Yeah. So you're saying all oils, because some have better oxidative stability than others?
Yeah. So if you burn the food, then you've made it toxic. Because burnt food is toxic. Whether it's starch you burn, that'll increase inflammation and risk of cancer.
Because you create protein, acrylamide, right? When you burn starch.
Acrylamides, yeah. Yep. And proteins increase inflammation and cancer when you fry it. Mm-hmm. And oils increase inflammation and cancer when you fry them, independent of each other.
Right.
So everything you burn becomes toxic. It becomes partially toxic.
Yeah.
So frying is a really bad idea. And I tell people to get their frying pan out, turn it upside down, hit themselves on the head with it really hard, so it's associated with pain, and then park it in the garbage can.
Now you're saying, so there are certain oils that have much lower oxidative stability than others. Like corn oil, for example, would be very low oxidative stability. Or fish oil or flaxseed oil, long chain omega-3s, or a lot more unsaturated fats. Yeah. Whereas like the saturated fats or something like olive oil, which has a lot of polyphenols in it, have a much greater oxidative stability.
Right. So the oxidative stability makes a difference. The more sensitive the oil are. So omega-3s more than omega-6, more than olive oil, more than saturated fat. The more double bonds they have, the more chemically sensitive they are, the closer they are to being essential, the worse they get when you fry them. But then people say, okay, well, if you fry, just use saturated fats. No, because you're still going to burn your food, and you're still going to wreck the oil, and you're still going to increase inflammation and cancer. So the best thing you can say about hard fats for frying is that it's less worse than using the liquid oils. But it's not good advice for health to tell people to fry oils. It'd be better to tell them cook in water and then add oils made with health in mind, undamaged, and rich and balanced in omega-3 and omega-6 to your food after it comes off the heat. And then what you get is they enhance flavors, and they also improve the absorption of the oil-soluble nutrients in foods. So it's good for health to put oil on foods after they come off the heat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're talking about obviously frying oils.
So that's frying.
The second
is the so-called cooking, salad, and culinary oils, the colorless, odorless, tasteless ones, because of that 1% damage that's already been done to them by the processing before they go in the bottle, before you buy them.
Right.
And in terms of cooking and salad oils, you can use good oils in salad. You can use better oils in salads. And it's better to use water for cooking. In fact, when I was a kid, cooking meant boiling things in water. Yeah. And the other one was called frying. Now, when we talk about, cooking with oils, it makes it sound like we're doing something good, but we're not cooking with oils. We're frying. We're burning the foods. Okay. Right? Yeah. So the cooking oils are the second. The third is we already talked about trans fats, so that was number 3, and number 4 is saturated fats. But this will be an interesting story for you, because I know you're into keto. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So saturated fats make platelets more sticky and make people more insulin resistant. But if you have enough omega-3s in your diet, omega-3s make your platelets less sticky and make you more insulin sensitive. So if you make sure you bring in the omega-3 and omega-6 undamaged in optimum quantities, you can eat saturated fats and they will not cause you problems, because they do the opposite of what the saturated fats do. And you almost have to say that the problems that saturated fats cause should actually be blamed on not getting enough omega-3 in your diet.
Yeah, I actually agree. And then I also have a disagreement with that statement. I definitely agree that with your second statement, you got to have the omega-3s in there. Yeah. Now, the first statement that saturated fats alone cause platelet aggregation and inflammation, I disagree with that. I think that the studies were done on people that had a higher carbohydrate diet. So they had higher amount of insulin in their system. So they weren't controlled well. Okay. So based on that, because what tends to happen is, if people are eating, because our society has demonized saturated fat, people that tend to have eaten them when they were doing those studies. Now people are starting to open up to, healthy fats and things like that. But back then, those tended to be people that didn't take as good a care of their health to begin with. So they were eating, the burger and fries, right? As opposed to people that ate more polyunsaturated fats tend to be your vegetarians, right? And things like that also practice other healthy practices. They ate more vegetables, less likely to smoke, things like that. So I think that there were the studies weren't controlled well enough. So I think it was more causation than, or a correlation rather than
causation.
What I would like to see would be taking a look at somebody that is on a low carb diet, less than 20% of their calories coming from carbohydrates, and looking at their saturated fat levels, right? Comparing that with somebody that same amount of carbohydrates, let's say same macronutrients, but a lower level of saturated fat. and then looking at inflammatory levels, right? And having kind of two big groups. I think if we did that study, we'd be able to understand that. So that's my statement on the first one. But the second one, I totally agree with. You definitely have to have the omega-3s in order to just keep inflammation under control. And they go hand in hand with saturated fats, right? Because when you look at the cell, the saturated fat is really stabilizing, and the omega-3 is fluid. So it allows kind of those hormone receptors to.
Right. And there's a balance between those two.
There's a balance. Exactly.
And even cholesterol gets involved in making sure.
That's right. And I think I learned that from your book, actually. Yep.
But when it comes to the whole issue of fats, the whole universe of fats, there are only two things you have to have: omega-3 and omega-6. You want them in the right ratio because they compete. Because if you get too much of one, it'll crowd out the other. If you get too much of the other, it'll crowd out the one. So you need them in the right ratio. They need to be made under protection from light, oxygen, and heat, so they don't get damaged in the process of being made.
Because they're very fragile.
Because they're very, very sensitive. And
so
the reason why they're so energetic in the body, which I'll get to that in a second, is because they're so chemically active. So so the chemically active is a good thing. But then if you just let them lie around, then they're like perishable foods. So you need to protect them. So we put them in a brown glass bottle. We put a box around the bottle. We put them in the fridge in the factory. We put them in the fridge in the stores, and you keep them in the fridge at your home. And when we ship them for longer than 2 weeks, they are shipped refrigerated. So a lot of care gets taken to keep the most sensitive of all of our essential nutrients, to keep them stable, not stable, to keep them undamaged. So a lot of care went into that, and how the system for pressing, filtering, settling, filling is done. It has to be so tight that no light, no oxygen, and only low heat gets to the oil while it's being produced. From the time it's in the seed to the time it's in the bottle, nitrogen flushed, and in the fridge with the box around it. Can't have light or oxygen in it. And light and oxygen go, they go everywhere. So the system has to be super, super, super tight. And that's in a way is my claim to fame. I decided to give them the care they need. Now, if you have those two, everything else your body can actually make. All of the saturated fats and all of the monounsaturated fats and all of the omega-3 and 6 derivatives, like the stuff you get in fish oil, which are the most damaged of our oils, your body can actually make all of those because every cell has the genes to do that. And so what we started to do is actually, we kind of pioneered the keto diet, but we never called it that, and we never made a point of it. But what we used to do is we worked with athletes, and the athletes were all carb loading. And when you carb load, you get about a pound of glycogen, animal starch in your liver and your muscles. And then you go and run your marathon. And in those days, you couldn't drink sugar drinks while you were running. So you literally had to do it on whatever you had going in your body. At mile 20, they ran out of carbs because that's all you get out of all of the glycogen you can store. It's about 20 miles. And their carb burning genes were turned on, but their fat burning genes were turned off because carbs turn off fat burning in the body. And they turn on fat production. And the body will burn the carbs first because they're potentially can be harmful. High blood sugar, low blood sugar. So we said to those guys, you guys, you're doing it wrong. What you need to do is carb deplete. And you need, so that when you start your race, your fat burning genes should be turned on full bore.
For sure.
And you run the entire race on fats. Because if you were normal weight and your body, your fat percentage was 8%, and you burned a half of that, in other words, 4%, you could run 300 miles on that.
You got tons of fuel in the bank. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And carbs are...
And fat has always been the energy storage. It's more efficient storage for weight. It has more calories per gram.
Right.
And it can go it can take you a long ways. So we said to them, so carb deplete before the race and tank up on your omega-3 and 6.
Yeah.
Because omega-3s turn on fat burning actively and turn off fat production.
Right. And one of the key ways they do that is they improve insulin sensitivity. So when, and really that's the key hormones. When insulin's elevated, you're going to store fat, burn sugar. And when insulin's down, because your body's very responsive to it, you're able to keep it low and you keep the carbohydrate levels down. Then you're going to be able to burn fat for fuel, and omega-3s are really key for that. And then your body also gets thrifty at using carbs. So it says, I only have a certain amount here stored in my muscles and liver. I'm only going to use it for when I'm in a really truly anaerobic state, right? So like when you can't get enough oxygen to burn sufficient fat, then you kick into that glycolysis and use the sugar for fuel. But other than that, you're burning fat. You're in aerobic.
So we didn't take it down to that level, but we just were. Yeah. So what happened is not everybody followed us because it was so completely against what people were told. But the ones who did said, I did what you said. And when I finished running my marathon, I never hit the wall. And when I finished my marathon, I felt like I had enough energy to run another one.
Yeah, it makes sense because also their inflammation, oxidative stress was a lot lower, and they were producing ketones. They were running off of those ketones as well. And
on top of that, less water retention because carbs make you retain water, so you have a little more weight to slug those 26 miles.
Right, exactly.
So and the keto diets now, they work for weight management. Mm-hmm. Part of it is dehydration, but part of it is you get
early stages burning. Dehydration. Yeah,
but they're not long-term sustainable if you don't also make sure that you get enough omega-3 and omega-6s, because those are essential. And there are many people who don't do that, and part of the reason I think is because omega-3 and 6s take a lot more care. You can't just flip them somewhere. You have to treat them with care, and you have to protect them from light.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, people are getting a lot of damaged fats and damaged omega, and an improper ratio where they're getting way too much omega-6. Not enough omega-3. That's also another big factor there.
Huge factor because because omega-6s are in every seed nut oil.
Right.
Omega-3s are only a few sources. Yeah, and they're more northern or southern sources because they're high energy fats. Because when it gets cold up in the north, you need more energy.
Right.
Even the fish, when they're in like really cold water, they have a lot of omega-3s. That's where the fish omega-3s come from. Yep. Because in that cold water, and they're not warm-blooded, so that they basically go inactive, just like insects do when it gets cold.
Yeah.
But in the water, the seals are warm-blooded. So they could buzz around in that cold water. So the fish have to have something that protects them so they can get away on a moment's notice in that environment.
Yeah, so those long chain omega-3s.
Yeah, those are long chain omega-3s.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about omega-3s because you have short chain omega-3s like ALA, alpha linoleic acid, which is in flaxseed and walnuts and things like that, plant foods. And then you have got your long chain omega-3s, which is what we find in things like cold water fish, like you talked about. And that's your EPA and your DHA.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Let's talk about, I know you're a big fan of flax. So when some people are taking omega-3s.
Yeah. Yeah. We developed flaxseed oil. That was our first oil because when I found out that most people don't get enough omega-3s and how sensitive they are. So like if we could make them with health in mind and bring them back to the population, a lot of good things should happen. Yeah. Because every cell needs them. So if you're not getting enough for optimum health, then they should have effects on every part of the body. And the research now says that if you increase omega-3s or when you increase omega-3s, provided they're not damaged and don't contain toxic chemicals, you can improve virtually every major degenerative condition of our time. That's a summary of the research. Right. So they have widespread effects. I've basically, when I started, I already knew about fish oils and I already knew about the damage done to fish oils. And so I never worked with fish oils because it was too damaged for me. So my thought was, well, the body can turn alpha-linolenic acid, the plant omega-3 essential fatty acid, into essential fatty acid derivatives, the EPA and DHA that you find in fish oil. Let's just make sure we get enough starting material so that the body can do the conversion. Because if you have no starting material, you can't do any conversion. So we just wanted to build the foundation. And these are food oils. This is the food oil foundation, omega-3 and 6 in the food oil foundation. That foundation is messed up. We have too much 6, not enough 3. The omega-6s are partially damaged. So what we said is, why don't we just create something? First, we did flaxseed oil. I became omega-6 deficient on flaxseed oil because I used it as my only source of fat in the diet. I wanted to see what would happen.
Oh, yeah.
So I got dry eyes, skipped heartbeats, arthritis-like pain in finger joints, and thin, papery skin. And
so you weren't consuming like any olive oil or anything? You were just doing flax?
I was only using flax oil because I was doing an experiment.
You were doing an experiment, yeah.
Yeah, because the guys—
Don't try that at home, folks.
Yeah, don't try it at home. It's been done. We know the answer.
Yeah.
No, it's because the guys I worked with started saying flaxseed oil is the best source of both essential fatty acids. And I didn't think that was true because I knew what the ratio was.
Yeah.
But I didn't have proof. So let me at least try it on myself. So I fixed it by eating sunflower seeds. Sunflower seed oil has only omega-6s, no omega-3. And then I got the balance back and all of the symptoms disappeared. And at that point I said, we should balance this oil better. Because if people can get deficient, because there was a big buzz about flax oil, flax oil. And I ran into other people who just took flax oil because it was the great oil.
Yeah.
And they became omega-6 deficient. So I said, I'm trying to get people healthy. We need to balance it better. And then we developed a blend.
No, the thing is that I don't think that most people would do a flaxseed oil only diet though, right? So a lot of people are eating nuts, they're eating, maybe grains, meat, things like that may be higher in omega-6 too.
Yeah. Well, most of the seeds and nuts will still be higher in omega-6s.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Flax is really the only one
that's really high.
That's really high. Walnuts have it, but they're not but they still have a lot of omega-6 too.
Small amount. Yeah. They have a lot of omega-6.
Right. And hemp, how about hemp? Hemp is like what, 4-to-1 ratio?
No, 3-to-1.
3-to-1. Yeah,
3 times more omega-6. I work with 2 times more omega-3 because they're the high energy. They're the ones that do so many things. They're the ones that almost everybody isn't getting enough of. But
and so you're in your supplement, it's a 2-to-1 ratio, omega-3 to omega-6.
Correct.
Yep. But most people also, because of their diet tends to be a lot higher in omega-6. So your supplement is helping balance that.
Yeah. Well, we want to do high grade the omega-3s because they're missing, but we also want to give them omega-6s made with health in mind.
Right.
Because most of the omega-6s that we get from oils are not made with health in mind.
Yeah.
And we want to get more omega-3s, but enough omega-6s.
Right.
So that's why we made the blend that way. And if you're healthy, you could eat seeds and nuts till you got to a ratio of maybe 4-to-1 in favor of omega-6s.
Right. So 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 is kind of, I've heard people say the ideal ratio is somewhere between 2-to-1 and 4-to-1 omega-6 to omega-3 is as far as the overall.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
4-to-1 in favor of omega-6s.
Right.
What did they call that? They call that the perfect ratio. But you know what? We have always gotten better results with twice as much omega-3 because of the energy and the healing that it does.
And I think that's also because it's so much easier to get omega-6s in your diet, in today's diet. Right. So most people are eating a diet that's probably 8-to-1, 10-to-1. So
10-to-1, 20-to-1. 20-to-1,
20. Well, and even health conscious people, right? So your non-health conscious people are probably doing 20-to-1, right? Way more omega-6 to omega-3, creating prostaglandin imbalances, oxidative stress and inflammation.
Lots
and
of
then health conscious people are eating more 8-to-1 or 10-to-1. So they still need the omega-3s to help balance that ratio.
Yeah. So that's why we high grade them. So what I say to people is, look, if you're healthy, you can go all the way to 1-to-4 instead of 2-to-1. But if you start getting problems, then you better suck back to the 2-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So, because my deal isn't you got to buy my stuff. My deal is I want you healthy. So
Sure,
I want to give you whatever information I can that you can use in practice that keep you healthy and that make you healthier.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
But we high graded the omega 3s just simply because so many people don't get enough, and they affect positively so many conditions.
Yeah. And you were the one that really pioneered the idea that these fats are so fragile, and the manufacturing process needs to really take that into mind, keep them really delicate. And also like the dark amber glass bottle, because we know plastic leaches out phthalates, all kinds of toxins. But if you just have a glass bottle, like a lot, some brands used to have just kind of a plain glass bottle, you still have the light coming in, oxidizing these oils.
Yeah, not oxidizing. What light does is it creates free radicals, and then free radicals create chain reactions. Yeah, and every time you create a free radical, it just takes one photon of light. Yeah, and there's tons of them going through. The average when you get a chain reaction, on average, 30,000 reactions happen before that free radical comes back into a pair and ends that chain reaction. So it's 30,000 for each ray of light. Right. and there are so many rays of light going through the glass. So you say, no, we got to cut out the light. Brown bottle, but that's not enough. So we put it in a box. Right. So that, to help protect it. Yeah. And it's a pain to do all that, and glass is harder to, it's more expensive, and can break, and it weighs more. So it costs more to ship. But you know what? Life requires care.
Yeah, you got to do it. Exactly. Now,
what you need
to take ALA, the small chain omega-3, and to be able to convert it into EPA and DHA, because the best studies on omega-3s have been done showing the health benefits come from the long chain EPA and DHA. ALA definitely has benefits, but your body's got to convert it, and it uses the delta 6 desaturase enzyme. Now, I've heard that that process is very energy dependent, and there's like I've heard somewhere like 1 to 5% gets converted in the liver. So like for every one, one part of ALA you take in, only 1 to 5% of that's going to be able to convert into EPA and DHA. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the research over the years has different people have measured it in different ways and gotten widely different results. So there's something not right, because it should be consistent. Mm-hmm. I think it's agreed that women convert better than men. Okay. Now that makes a lot of sense. Why? Because when a woman is pregnant, she needs to feed one brain and she needs to build another. Right. So her ability to convert alpha-linolenic acid into EPA and DHA, or especially DHA, the brain omega-3, is very important. Men never get pregnant, hardly ever get pregnant. Yeah. So they don't need that conversion. But in 2015, there was a study that explained where all of this is off. And it goes like this. They looked at how these studies are done. So they give them labeled alpha-linolenic acid, and they give them a shot in the arm. Okay, so then they know exactly 5 grams of ALA labeled, and then they measure how much labeled DHA you end up with. That's how they did it.
Right, that makes sense.
They completely ignored that you already have 15 to 50 grams of ALA in your body, also available for conversion. They just ignored it.
So where is that extra ALA sitting? Just in cell membranes?
In cell membranes, in your fat tissues.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean, the most available is stored in your membranes. Right. Right, and then balanced with cholesterol and saturated fatty acids.
And that's why when you eat like grass-fed beef, you're also getting ALA in that, for example.
A very small amount, because the bacteria in the stomach of cows or of beef actually saturate the ALA, and that's also why you get trans fatty acids in beef and in milk product, dairy products. So, what were you talking about?
We were talking about the conversion of ALA.
Oh, the conversion, yeah. So they figured out that the conversion, because of the way these experiments are done, and ignore so much of the ALA that's already in the body, underestimate by at least 3 times the rate of conversion. So it'd be like 3 to 10 times, depending on how much ALA you have in your tissues that isn't labeled, but that is also available for conversion. Second thing is they didn't measure how much of the DHA was retroconverted into EPA, because that happens in the body, and they didn't measure how much of the labeled DHA was forward converted into eicosanoids, prostaglandins, prostacyclins, or myrisins, or resolvins, or protectants, which are antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. So they just ignored that part.
So the body makes those compounds
out of DHA.
Yeah, right.
Right. So it's not like it just goes from ALA to DHA and it's over.
Right.
There are hundreds of things that the body makes out of these essential fatty acids, and we don't even know them all yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the second mistake. The third thing was they found out that the turnover of the brain of DHA is only 2.4 to 3.8 milligrams a day. That means if you got 1 gram of ALA, you would have more than enough to make that. Now, some of it is burned for energy if it's in the triglyceride form. So you have to take that into account. And what we do when we tell people a tablespoon per 50 pounds of body weight per day of the blend. Yeah. You're getting, I weigh about 200 pounds, 4 tablespoons, 56 grams. It's about 40% ALA. So I'm getting like 20 grams of ALA. Right. That's like more than I need. Yeah. In order to, and so the conversion could be less than 0.5%, and I would still get enough DHA. And why the brain? Because brain has the most DHA. There's also some in the retina, and there's some in sperm. Those are the highest DHA.
And one of your formulations, you also added in algae oil.
Yeah,
right, which has concentrated DHA, which is basically where the fish get the DHA.
Yeah, and that was recommended for people who are pregnant. You know, if they're not sure, it's almost more a factor of worrying about, oh my God, because so much marketing information says, oh, the body can't convert, oh, you got to have fish oil. You know, even I've seen a study where the study said women can convert 5 to 10% of the ALA they get into DHA. Men can only convert about 1%. Therefore, everybody should take fish oils. That's what what the conclusion was of a study. That the study actually said something different. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on that is about market protection that you have to sometimes wade through.
Gotcha. I see. So how about things that can help enhance that conversion? Are there like herbs or different nutrients that are needed to help the conversion of ALA into DHA?
Yeah, this came out of there's the Brahmin caste in India, 300 million people. Yeah, for at least 5,000 years. No fish oil, no krill oil. Krill oil, by the way, is what I would recommend if you want to take a supplement. Yeah, because it's made different. It's not damaged. It's in a form that's better absorbed and better conserved in the body. But they have never had them. But they have some ALA in their psyllium seed, not the husks, but the seed. Yeah. And there's a little bit in green vegetables, and there's a little bit in lentils and beans and all those kind of things. They must be converting because they have their brains work just as well. Their vision is just as good and they reproduce just as well as fish eaters. Yeah. So what I found out is turmeric improves the conversion of omega-3s to omega-3 derivatives.
That's good to know.
Well, they have ALA, turmeric. There are probably other ones, but that's only beginning. I found
Yeah,
found that
because
super
they have like
interesting.
curries that have
Yeah,
like
all the
cumin.
curries,
Yeah, exactly.
all the curries have turmeric in them,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then the other thing is that if you don't have enough B6 and
Yeah.
B3 and C and
Mm.
zinc and magnesium, then that will inhibit conversion. So the other way around, if you
And those
make
are
sure,
big things because a lot of people are zinc deficient.
oh
You
sure,
know, that's
80%
become a
magnesium.
much larger topic of conversation, especially with coronavirus and things like
Yeah,
that.
oh sure.
Magnesium is a big deficiency.
Yeah,
So yeah,
80%.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's
Yeah. Vitamin
critical.
D is not involved in it as far as I know. And
Really?
then the other thing is that probiotics, their growth
Mm.
is enhanced by omega-3s.
Yeah.
And I think they're also involved in omega-3 conversion.
So
So,
synergistic relationship there. That would
yeah,
make sense. Yeah.
yeah. And so that's another thing that a lot of people don't get enough of,
Hmm.
because when you cook your foods, you kill the probiotics that covered the
Right.
food in nature.
Right. Yep.
Nature's mandate was always fresh, whole, raw, organic,
Yep.
mostly plant-based. And the probiotics were on that food. So when a
Yep.
cow eats grass in the meadow, it has like a yogurty smell,
Yeah.
mouth smell, because the probiotics are introduced in its mouth. They work their way through the whole body. And the rot bacteria that would otherwise take their place are kept in check by the probiotics.
Right. And they got a lot of soil compounds too, like humic acids and fulvic acids that are coming in there, right? Which
True.
actually enhance even deeper delivery of nutrients. So really interesting,
True. Yeah, yeah.
When it comes from nature, right? It's
you know what? God knew what she was doing when she created everything.
Yeah, he
right?
sure did.
And we mess with it at our peril.
We do, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about coffee. And popular drink is putting in like butter in your coffee and making bulletproof coffee.
Yeah.
Now, do you put flax oil in coffee? How is that beneficial?
I've done it. It blends better than the harder fats,
mm-hmm.
and it's better from the perspective that it's essential.
Yeah.
And it's better from the perspective is not only do you get the buzz from the coffee, the energy buzz from the coffee, but you also get an energy buzz from the omega-3s.
Yeah.
And so my recommendation would be is if you want to do it the best way, pour good oil in it.
Yeah.
Good oil made with health in mind.
Right. Makes sense.
Or mix mix your coconut or butter with some of it.
Add a
because
little bit of that in there.
It'll blend just as well, it'll taste just as well.
Yeah.
And it'll get you even a better energy hit than coffee will do by itself. Because basically the fat is in there as fuel.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So get the best fuel. The best fuel is, when we worked with athletes with the blend, within a month of taking a tablespoon per 50 pounds of body weight per day, mixed in food and their intake spread out over the course of the day, within a month, when they worked their sport to exhaustion, they had 40 to 60% increase in stamina on average.
Makes sense.
And that all comes from the omega-3s.
Right. The omega-3s.
It's the highest energy molecule of all of our essential nutrients.
Yeah, super important. It's something that we've got to get into our diet. So critical. And obviously we can supplement with it as well. I'm interested in knowing what your daily routine is. Like what's your daily diet? Do you eat 3 meals a day? Do you snack? Do you do intermittent fasting? What do your meals look like on a typical basis?
I think the shortest way to say is I screw around a lot because I'm always trying something.
Yeah.
I find it interesting, right? I mean, you have a body and it gives you feedback if you're paying attention. So, if your mother said, don't play with your food, that's the only advice your mother ever gave you that you should not listen to. because if you don't play with your food, how will you know what works and what works better and what doesn't?
Yeah. Trial and error, right?
Exactly. It's like we were told, eat everything on your plate, right?
Yeah.
So after the war, right? Eat everything on your plate.
Sure.
No, play with your food. Find out what works for you, because your body is not the same as everybody else's body. And some things that work for a lot of people might not work for you.
Yeah. Well, what do you typically do? Do you follow like a ketogenic diet, or do you do like carb cycling? What do you like to do?
Yeah. So first of all, I eat when I'm hungry.
Right. So how often are you typically hungry in a course of a day?
And it varies.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sometimes up till 4 a.m, sometimes 5 a.m, then sleep till noon. My sleep is fine, right? And then I'll go back to going to bed earlier and getting up earlier. So I get up, I might not eat anything till noon.
Right. So you're doing some intermittent fasting.
So yeah, and I do pay some attention to the 16-8 intermittent fasting cycle. I like
That's a powerful strategy.
That your body will eat the garbage.
Yeah, autophagy.
Because you're forcing it to, and that we were made to starve sometimes.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when sometimes you had feasts and sometimes you had famines. So now, because we don't have the famines, we have to create the famines.
Right.
The famines, we were made to do well with intermittent famines. Okay. I mean, famine is a negative word, but that's where it comes from. Right. So because it's not happening natural, we have to deliberately create that.
Yeah. We got to be intentional about it. Yeah.
Does it work? Absolutely works. I've also done fasting. 14 days is the longest fast I've done. But again, I'm not fasting every 3 months or every this and that.
Sure. Yeah.
I try it out. I want to see what happens in my body when I do it.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. I eat mostly plants.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm on my own, I eat mostly raw.
Okay. So mostly raw, mostly organic. Plants.
Yeah. And for me, it's because if you look back like not 200,000 years, but 6 million years into our ancestry, they were, first of all, nature's mandate was always fresh or raw organic.
Right.
Every creature eats its food raw. There are no creature runs around with a frying pan. Right. So fresh or raw organic it's always this place to aim for. And I tell people, start where you are and just head in that direction.
So what are your top 5 favorite foods that you would say you're consuming quite often on a given week?
Broccoli's got to be really high there. I love broccoli. I don't know
raw broccoli or steamed?
I eat it raw.
You eat it raw. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I eat it raw, and I get tahini.
Okay.
Tahini, organic.
Oh
tahini.
yeah. Sesame seeds. Yep.
Yeah. Ground sesame seed.
That's right.
And I'll open it up. I pour off the sesame oil.
Yeah. Cause it's high omega 6.
I put my oil in it because it's a better oil. Right. And then I turn it put in enough so that it's liquid.
Yeah.
And I'll dip the broccoli in that.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a whole meal.
Right.
I eat cabbage.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. I eat lots of fruit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not lots, but I eat quite a bit of fruit, apples and oranges and bananas and part of it why I eat like that is because it's simple. Like I don't, not much dishes to wash and not much cooking to do, and I'm not burning stuff on the stove, and and I'm always busy doing something else. So cooking is not like the thing that I think is where I should spend my time.
Sure.
And what else? I eat every once in a while. I'll have some bread, but I'm more plants, seeds, and nuts.
Yeah. What's your favorite type of meat?
Favorite type?
Yep.
Maybe caribou when my son goes hunting.
Oh, there you go.
Because he's
wild
getting
game.
Yeah, but it's rare. It's maybe 2 times a year, 3 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm and I do that partly because his family, but partly because I if it wasn't for wild meat, I wouldn't be eating meat at all. I know too much about how it's grown and how they're treated and all of that. It's like, now I don't think human beings were 100% vegan.
Yeah.
By nature.
Of course not. Yep.
But the research is pretty clear that if you want the longest life and the best health, then you do it on whole food, plant-based, plus a B12 supplement.
I actually really disagree with that research because I think it's based on epidemiological studies. And again, when you're looking at surveys that people fill out, they're not, it's
not as accurate as they should be.
Yeah, it's a correlation, right? There's correlation there, but not causation because people that are going to basically say that they ate more vegetables and this and that tend to have healthier lifestyle habits. Just a lot of other factors that are involved in it.
Right.
But what I do think is that calorie restriction, or at least, periodic calorie restriction, like we were talking about, that fasting, I think that very much is associated with longevity. I think that's well done in the research. And I think controlling insulin, right? So keeping your, and which calorie restriction does. And, some people are on plant-based diets or eating calorie restricted diets. So they're, because of that, getting their insulin levels down. I think that's really key, because insulin drives up inflammation, cell replication.
And they tend to be less overweight.
True.
But even that's not true, because you can get fat on potatoes and and rice and grains.
Totally.
So I limit those. I don't have much of that in my house.
Yeah.
I have somebody living with me. My daughter came here.
Yeah.
She's a COVID escapee, so she's here with my grandson. So she cooks a little different. When I was younger, I ate more meat. As I get older, I find it better and better on plants. It just works for me. And I'm used to raw, simply because I've been doing it for a long time. Sometimes people have to take 6 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
If they're going in that direction to get it going, because you have to get your digestive system used to that. If you've been eating cooked foods a lot.
Yeah, totally.
We did our first plant-based diet in 1988. When we did a tour through the U.S. We went to 35 states, 17,000 miles by road, 101 days. And we found out, and it was like worked all day, drove all night. And this is when we were started talking about oils made with health in mind. And we found within the first 2 weeks, if we ate meat, we felt heavy. And if we ate carbs, we got tired. And so we did the rest of the tour, 86 days, on just raw vegetables, cabbage, cabbage and carrots and just whatever we could get. We literally had a basket full of raw foods in the van that we
drove
in. We slept in the van.
Gosh,
it was quite a, it was so, and that was the first time I was on a plant only diet. We had energy to burn. We had so much energy. We literally, it was fun. Of course, we were excited and we were inspired. But as older I get, the more I like plants. I still eat a little bit of dairy sometimes, but I don't have any meat in the house. None of it, and no eggs either.
Okay. Yep.
No, if you're, they can be very good food at times, but I think our food is too rich, and animal foods in some ways are too rich and don't have enough fiber in them. And fiber plays a huge role in our digestive health. So, and then
interesting. Yeah. I see fiber and prebiotics as kind of like a continuum or like a bell curve. I think that there are some people that tend to thrive on a lower carb or a lower fiber lower prebiotic diet. Okay. Then there are other people that really need a lot of prebiotics, right? For example, low FODMAPs diet. There's a lot of people that tend to do just a lot better in general, on a low FODMAPs diet. There's a popularity now of a carnivore diet. A lot of people are reversing autoimmune conditions. I think I would put them on the spectrum of, these are people that tended to just do well. Their microbiome does well with less prebiotic foods. Yeah? And then there's people that do really well, like you, on a raw plant-based diet, and you're thriving on that. And your body's doing really well, with that high fiber, high probiotic or high prebiotic diet that somebody else may struggle with, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely high fiber in that continuum.
And you thrive on it.
When I ate more animal product, I got constipated a lot.
Yeah.
For me, the fiber is a huge issue for bowel regularity.
Yeah. So your microbiome really loves that. Yeah. And I wonder if also that you had lower levels of stomach acid, right? So like one test that I actually will do on a lot of different clients is we have like 3 tests, basically, like a steak test. If you eat a steak on an empty stomach, right? Just eat a steak, 6 ounces. how do you feel over the next 3 hours, right? If you're feeling constant, if you're just feeling terrible, it's a sign your body's not producing enough stomach acid to really metabolize it and break it down. Then we do the broccoli test, right? So you eat broccoli, you wait 3 hours, just broccoli, you should feel great, right? If you're feeling bloated, gassy, things like that, it's a sign you probably have bacterial overgrowth in your small intestine that's fermenting it too quickly. Maybe you're not producing enough pancreatic enzymes, and a lot of times those go together. And the third test is a fat bomb test, right? So you take basically, like the coconut bombs, right, with chocolate and coconut. So it's basically just like 200 grams of fat. You eat that, or not 200 grams, but 200 calories, 200 to 400 calories of fat. You eat that, and if you're struggling to digest that and you're having indigestion, things like that, you have poor bile flow, right? So that kind of helps me understand, okay, where's this person at, right?
I don't think I have problems either with hydrochloric acid or with bile or with overgrowth.
Yeah, that's a test that you could actually do to tell, right?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to play with my food.
You can experiment. There you go. Well, Udo, you also have a oils book, right? So you have an oil change book and a mini course that you just recently came out with. And I think my listeners would be really interested in this.
We have, I have a couple of websites. One is udoschoice.com, UDOS choice. And on that, we talk about the oil and digestive enzymes, probiotics, a bunch of other stuff. And then I have another website. It's called The Udo, THEUDO. theudo.com, and we have courses and educational material, quite a lot of different educational material. My interests now are very wide ranging, anything to do with nature and human nature.
Right.
I have a book we call it the Book on Total Sexy Health, the 8 key parts designed by nature. So we talk about awareness. That's the foundation. That's where peace lives. That's the core of our being. It's invisible and mostly unnoticed because you have to bring your awareness inward rather than outward. So awareness, then life energy, then inspired creativity, then physical body, then survival smarts, then social group, then environment, and then big picture, terminal body in an infinite universe. And each one of those affects health in a different way. Each one is different in its nature and function. Each one needs a different kind of attention. Each one goes off in a different way, and each one responds to a different kind of intervention. And so I'm doing an overview of a coherent, comprehensive field of health, and as well a comprehensive field of human nature.
And this is your second book. So Fats I Heal, Fats I Kill was your first book.
Yeah.
So this is your second book.
It's actually my fifth, but
okay.
I have a cookbook, the only omega-3 cookbook. It's called Omega-3 Cuisine.
Oh, cool.
The recipes for health and pleasure.
Great. Where can people find that? On Amazon or on your website?
Yeah, you can find them. Yeah, you can find them on the website, theudo.com, Udo's Choice, and Amazon. And that one is a book where that's full of plant-based recipes, because the cook, these are not my recipes. Yeah. The chef is a vegan.
Okay.
And he wrote the recipes, and it's about how to use omega-3 oils in food preparation without damaging them.
Yep.
They always
Sounds interesting.
They always go on afterwards.
Right. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Udo, I mean, we could sit here and we could talk for hours. This has really been an honor of mine to be able to meet you and talk with you. You're somebody that I've looked up to in the field, and you've really been a pioneer. And I just want to take a moment and acknowledge you for that. Just being a pioneer when it comes to natural health, nutrition science, and you've really helped the world and helped millions of people at this point in your book and your knowledge and. Yeah, people like me that have used you as a reference to then help other people. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. Any last words of inspiration for our audience?
Well, you know what? Yeah, I'm a focus point. What people point at me and say, oh yeah, you did this and you did that. There were thousands of people involved in making that happen. From the consumer end to the packaging end to the farmer end. I just happened to be blessed to be in the right place at the right time with the right problem, asking the right questions. And then I just like, so I don't want to take too much credit for
Sure, yeah.
all the things
Praise the
that
Lord,
happened.
you know.
Yeah,
Praise the Lord
really.
that you're in the right place at the right time.
Really,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time. And guys, we'll see you guys on a future podcast. Go check out Udo's website and his books. Really a lot of great material there. And, be sure to share this podcast with somebody that you know and that you love, and share it on social media as well. So we appreciate that. Be blessed, everybody.